Right, I have ordered a set of AltRider Adventure II foot pegs for my BMW R1300 Trophy X. When I ordered this bike, and the reason I ordered Trophy X, so it comes with the enduro pack, meaning crash bars, slightly larger plate, off-road tires, taller suspension, and the enduro pegs, so that I wouldn't have to spend any money accessorizing like I did on my 1250. So I thought I'll just get it and everything will be perfect. I just go and ride. Now what I found is that the original foot pegs, especially when you lower them, you get this edge here which your boot then hits that, and you sort of boot sits on an angle, if you like, and they're not very wide. I was really expecting them to be a lot wider like the KTM pegs, but they're not very long. Width wise I should say it's okay, but they're not very long. And when you put your boot on, you can see down here it doesn't cover the whole, doesn't support the whole boot, which is a bit disappointing. I thought that slightly longer pegs would have been nice, and especially if you lower them, this edge here causes a bit of an issue. Anyway, so I decided to buy the AltRider foot pegs. I did have these on my 1250. I was very happy with them. Basically, they come with a, where should I bring the peg? Is very nice, and they come with these cleats. These cleats that you screw in. You put a little bit of Loctite, and you screw into each hole, which I will do, and I will record the installation of this. But what they look like, they sort of, if they go in the original position, you'll see that they're just a little bit sort of longer, just enough to cover the whole boot, and it's a flat platform, so it's a lot easier for your boot to sit on the peg. Now what I will do before installing, because I don't know whether this will sit a bit higher than the original peg, I will measure the distance, and I will report back whether that sits higher than the original in the lower setting. I guess when you put the original foot peg in the higher setting, then the AltRider may be lower, but I'll report that when I do the install. So we'll see how we go. So the AltRider Adventure II pegs come with obviously two foot pegs, left and right. Cleats are not yet installed. A bag of cleats, which you would screw in. We'll go through the install later. And a box of spacers, washers, a couple of bolts, and a couple of springs. The reason the springs are different color, I remember this from the last install I did on the 1250, is because one goes on the left, one goes on the right. The instructions for the install are on top of the box. You just need to scan the QR code and follow the instructions, which I will go through the install next. What do you need for the installation? Well, you need a 5mm Allen key. You need a 5mm socket, that's for the cleats, and you need a little bit of a blue thread lock or Loctite for the cleats that will go into the pegs. So that's really all the tools you need, and yeah, we'll go through the install. We'll install one side and then record the install on the other side. So the first step is to install these cleats into each of these holes. So there's plenty of them. I think they even give you some spares. So what you should do is put a little bit of a blue thread locker onto each one. And what I've done last time, I put instructions, you don't tighten them, you just nip them up, a little bit of Loctite on each one. Oh, that's probably a little bit too much. And then just screw it in. To make it easier, maybe just take the socket and screw it in. Now, I did put a little bit too much on that, so try just put a little dot, really, just a tiny amount. Do the same for the next one. They are flat at the top, and I was initially wondering when I had them on a 1250 that there will be a problem with grip when the boots sit on top. That might slide, but the edges are pretty sharp, and I've never had problems with them slipping. So yeah, I was quite happy with them. So I'll just go through installing the rest, and then I'll come back once I've installed them all. So that's the cleats installed on the second. And if you can find a lazy way, because they're quite fiddly, quite small, even though I don't have bloody big fingers, but very small cleats. If you can find a lazy way of screwing these in, a little bit of a quicker way, then by all means do it. I started doing it by hand and I ran out of patience. Anyway, what's good about AltRider is they give you 4 extra cleats just in case, I don't know, one comes out, which I don't know how one would come out, but I don't know. I don't think it will take a while for them to wear, but it's nice. It's nice that they give you the 4 extra cleats. So again, that's installed on the second one. Just go around and tighten them up. Again, don't need to overdo it. Just really nip them up. It's quite easy. Just a little bit time consuming, that's all. So just take your time, make yourself a cup of coffee and enjoy. Today is a rainy day outside, so I've got nothing better to do, so might as well spend some time working on the bike. I'm not really missing out on fantastic riding weather. Again, just wipe any excess thread locker off, and that's it. That is the second foot peg. All right, we'll move to the bike next. Okay, so to remove the original foot peg, just adjust this a bit. We will need to remove this circlip first, but move the side stand out of the way, gives us a little bit more room, and then just pop the circlip off. It comes off just with a small screwdriver, and put that circlip aside because we will need it. So we will reuse the original pin. Once the circlip is out, it is just a matter of removing the pin. So it should come out relatively easy. I may have to wiggle it out a bit. Yeah, there it comes. That's a bit of a bugger. I think the gear lever's in the way. Okay. See if I can wiggle that out. And I have to remove, that would be a pain. I need to remove the gear lever just to be able to get the pin out. Surely that's not it. Surely we don't have to do that.
Oh, let's see. Yeah. I don't really want to scratch that, and I can't get it on an angle. Huh. Well, that's a bit of a pain. I think I may have to remove, or at least loosen, the gear selector in order to get this pin out. Bugger. Alright, let's try that. Well, I think we need a few extra tools to install this. So this is a T40. I think we need to remove this just to be able to get to that pin. So, yeah, drop that down. Just put the bolt in there so we don't lose it. Alright, now the pin will come out. There you go. Alright, so we'll save the pin. We'll need the pin. And that's the original peg with the spring. We won't need the spring. We'll be using the springs that come with AltRider pegs. So in terms of the weight, I'll tell you what, I'll measure this. I'll put this on the scale. Let's see what the difference is in weight. Okay, let's put it on the scale. So this is the original foot peg, the lowering foot peg that comes with the Adventure pack. So put that on the scale. We're looking at 397 grams. Okay, take that off. Let's put the AltRider with all the cleats in, so ready to go. Nothing else. Let's put that on the scale. 252. So about what did we say? 252 compared to 399 or 400. So almost 150 grams. So 300 grams between the two foot pegs. Lighter. No big deal, really. What's 300 grams? But they are bigger, but they're lighter. Okay, these are probably a little bit. These are probably a little bit bit stronger in steel, but the AltRiders never had a problem with. Dropped it quite a few times on the side. Never had a problem with these, and they're lighter. Okay, it's good to know. Alright, so a bit of a conundrum here, because these pegs, the AltRider, compared to the AltRider, compared to the original pegs, sit about 10 mil higher than the original pegs. If you follow the instructions to put this little sleeve in here, hang on, and then you put the bigger sort of sleeve or spacer that holds the spring, you put that underneath. So if you go with this configuration, I'll just remove the spring to show you what I mean. Come out. Okay, so if you go in this configuration, then the peg sits about 10 mil higher than the original foot peg in a higher position. So I moved it back to the original higher position. If you drop it, the original peg, you drop it down, and then it will sit 25 mil higher. So 10 mil higher in following the instructions. However, if I move this spacer and put the spacer at the top, so that would mean the spring would have to, well, That's really not going to work, is it? But if I put the spacer up, then it drops the foot peg down by about 5 mil. But I don't think that will work, because I might have to use this spring actually. We'll work with this spring. Oh yeah, it will work with this spring, which is for the other side. Okay, so it could work. Alright, so it could work. So if I do that, then the peg sits about only 5 mil higher than the original foot peg, but in the high position. Not ideal. I had my pegs in the low position. But yeah, we'll try this and see if it works for me. Alright, so I made an executive decision. I'm going to put the spacer at the top and the spring at the top rather than bottom as per the instructions, just to lower this peg down a bit. So there is a bolt that comes with the kit with a couple of spacers and washers to give you the right, and AltRider instructions are pretty good, you can see on their website, but to give you the right sort of angle. If you want to angle the pegs up, have them level. So according to the instructions, all you need to use is this large spacer, and if you screw that in here, it's supposed to give you a 90-degree angle to the bike. What I found that it doesn't quite, sort of drops down, so I use the level. So what I've done is they do give you extra washers. Just put in an extra one of the thicker washers. There's a thick and thin washers, quite a few of them. So what I've done is put fiddly little things. Put this little washer on, and then put the spacer and screw that in. So what I'll do is just put a little bit of Loctite on this bolt as well. A little bit of Loctite, and that goes in, and just tighten them up a little bit. I reckon 7 Newton meters. Tighten up. All right, and then we'll put the sleeve. Put the other sleeve space on the top with the spring wraps around. Use the spring for the right hand side, so they're color coded. So you've got a gold spring. Where's the other one? And a silver spring. Silver is for the left, gold is for the right. If you go with the original configuration, because I decided to swap the spaces and put the space on top just to lower the foot peg, then I'm using the spring from the right hand side. So it goes in here, line it up with the pin. Use a bit of WD-40 just to clean the pin from all the dirt and grit. And it's just a matter of really pushing it in. There it is. So you can see down here, it's that bolt with the spacers, and that gives us, if I look here, so the original, just with the spaces, they reckon it will give you 90 degrees. It wasn't quite 90 degrees, so I've just put that extra washer in, and it's sitting sort of a little bit more than 90, pushing your boot towards the bike, which is the same as the original peg. So I'm happy with that. So we'll see how we go with that. Now it's just a matter of putting the circ clip down the bottom, and job done for this side. So it's 5 mil higher than the original foot pegs, then the original foot pegs in the higher position, and 25mm higher than the original foot pegs in the lower position. Anyway, I may need to adjust the gear lever up a little bit, but we'll see how we go. Well, let's try that. After dropping the circlip about 5 times, I finally got it on, so I wanted to save you the pain of seeing me fail 5 times putting the bloody clips on. Anyway, it's on. So that's the left side done. And we'll repeat the same process for the right hand side, and then we'll see how sort of the boots sit, and I'll show you what it looks like from maybe a distance. Actually, the last step of the process is screwing the gear selector back on. Again, just putting a little bit of a thread locker on that bolt, which it had on it before anyway, and screwing it back on. I'll have to look up the torque setting for this, but for the time being I'm just going to tie it up. Okay, you can see that there is a slight adjustment here. Not ideal, not ideal, not ideal. I really want that gear selector up higher, so you can see that showing. You can see that it's a little bit lower. That's going to make it difficult. For the road it's okay, but off-road with the MX boots, it's going to make it a little bit difficult to get to that. So I'll adjust it. There's a little bit of adjustment here. See how much I can get that gear selector up, but I'll go install the other side first, then deal with that later. Alright, so the update on the AltRider foot peg install. Well, they're not there. So you can see that I decided to abandon the AltRider foot pegs. Why? Well, the reason is I've got my foot pegs set in a lower position, and they're perfect for my gear selector, and they're also perfect for my rear brake. Even more important for me, the rear brake. So if you see, basically it's in line with the rear brake, so when I go off-road I will shift this to the upper position, and it is perfect for accessing that brake when you need it, especially like going down hills. And that's with the pegs in the lower position. The reason I put these original pegs in the lower position is because I was struggling. I was reaching forward, even when I had this adjusted, I was still reaching forward to activate the brake. So I decided to lower the original pegs, and that works perfectly. So what I have been unable to do with the AltRider, so AltRider foot pegs sit 25mm higher than the original pegs in the lower position, as I mentioned before, and that's a problem. Now maybe you can see there's a little bit of space there, and there is an adjuster, rear brake adjuster, but I'm not quite sure. There's not 25mm in there. And with the rear brake, I did try the rear brake adjusting and pulling it up. Still, it was still out of reach for when the pegs were in the upper position, and especially even with these original pegs in the upper position, they're still 5mm lower than the AltRiders. So I didn't want to say that. I really wanted the AltRiders. I had them on 1250. I loved them, but they're just not working for me. If anyone has any ideas, and predominantly for the brake, I'm really more concerned about the brake rather than the gear shift, because gear shift I can sort of manage, but the rear brake I really need it working. So the other foot pegs I was looking at were the Fastway foot pegs. They're about double the price of the AltRider. I don't know if they sit lower. I was also looking at the Black Dog foot pegs. I think the Black Dog foot pegs sit about the same as the original, is in the upper position. So I'm not sure. If anyone knows of any foot pegs that sit a little bit lower than the originals, or at least match the original in the lower position, that would be fantastic. But it's a shame. It is a shame, because I really wanted those pegs to work. So anyway, live and learn, as they say. It still works for me. You know, I don't really have major problems, but it's nicer to have a wider platform. Anyway, that's it. Hope that helps.